Welcome to our webinar on influencer marketing. Thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Katie. I'm a Senior Insights Analyst here at Global Web Index, and I'm also joined by my colleagues Chris and Olivia.
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia, the Insights Analyst here.
I'm Chris, the Trends Analyst. Today we'll be taking an in-depth look at where influencer marketing fits within the purchase journey, which verticals it plays the largest role in, as well as issues relating to authenticity and trust.
You'll probably all be aware that using celebrities and other well-known people for brand endorsements has become a more and more popular strategy. And today we'll be exploring everything you need to know about it. This is actually quite a special webinar because we're going to begin by seeing what our core research has to say about influencer marketing, and then we'll finish off by previewing some data from another research study we did in the UK and US, where we asked consumers more about their attitudes towards influencer marketing. So I'm going to be kicking things off today by looking at who is most likely to be engaging with influencers and their content. So when we ask internet users who they like to follow on social media, some of the top scoring types of accounts are celebrities and influencers. Beyond friends and favourite brands, around a third are following actors and singers, and over a fifth follow sports stars and comedians. It's well known that the biggest actors and musicians have huge followings on social media. And for brands partnering with them, this can mean a really big reach among new consumers and also some great potential to boost brand awareness. But the biggest names also come with the biggest price tags. As a result, we're seeing more and more brands move towards partnering with micro-influencers like bloggers. It's actually proven to be a big success for many brands.
Yeah, and I think one of the most noteworthy examples of this is L'Oreal. So previously, the brand really focused on big names to promote its products, but more recently have moved towards less well-known influencers to critique its products rather than just promote them. And the brand has said it's seen really great results.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good example. And I think this really makes endorsements seem much more authentic too. And I know you're going to touch on authenticity a little bit later on, Olivia. But for now, if we take a look at who the biggest celebrity networkers are, and by celebrity networkers, we mean those who use social media to keep up with celebrities. There's actually a really strong age trend at play. So over 70% of 16 to 24s can be classed as celebrity networkers, but figures dropped steeply in line with age and hit a low of 31% among 55 to 64s. I think it's also quite interesting that there's actually not much difference across the genders. I think people are probably more likely to associate influencer marketing with women than men, but actually our data shows that 56% of men are celebrity networkers, showing how actually influencers can have a great reach across the genders. I'm going to touch a little bit more on influencer marketing and men later, because I personally found the figures quite surprising.
How about income? Do we see any different levels of engagement when we take that into account?
There aren't actually. There seems to be no real correlation between income and interest in influencers or celebrities. But we do see some quite big variation across the regions. So internet users in Latin America and APAC are particularly keen on celebrities. I think this is largely driven by their online populations skewing slightly younger. And as I mentioned before, the younger consumers are much more enthusiastic about celebrities. I think it's probably the attitudes of celebrity networkers that are the most interesting and the most revealing. If we take a look at their self-perceptions in our data, we see the importance of self-image, fashion, and group belonging. Celebrity networkers are 16% more likely to value keeping up with the latest fashions, and they're similarly more likely to say that they buy products to be part of the community built around them. And I think this nicely shows how they're very impressionable to brands that have a certain profile and status, and how they're probably going to buy into the brands that can actually boost their image and their social standing among their peers. It's also clear in our data that they're a very easily influenced group. So they're more likely than average to say that they are swayed by the opinions of others. And as a result, many are probably likely to look for reassurance before committing to a purchase.
And I guess this reassurance coming directly from celebrity role models would definitely suit her.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that we've kind of touched on their attitudes and demographics, I think, Chris, you're going to take us through the impacts that influencers can have in the purchase journey.
That's right. Thanks, Katie. So for all the buzz around influencer marketing, it can be difficult for brands to figure out whether or not it's a worthwhile investment. So I'm going to explore how much impact influencers actually have on the purchase journey for their followers. Between 15 and 20% of 16s to 24s say they're influenced by expert bloggers, celebrity endorsements, or vlogs. Now, when looking at the impact influencers have on brand discovery, I don't think a young skew on any of these data points will come as a massive surprise to anyone. On their own, they seem like small figures, and you might be tempted to ask why we put so much attention on influencer marketing as a tactic. But influencer marketing often wants to work at a subconscious level when it's not framed in an advertising space and comes through natively. On top of that, there's a lot of cross-channel posting too. So you might see an influencer's YouTube video within their Twitter feed, or you could see a product promoted through either an Instagram photo or a YouTube video, which is different, very different types of media. All told, these can make influencer marketing difficult to track. And so I think one of the ways you can understand its true reach is to aggregate these data points of expert bloggers, celebrities, and vlogs.
And someone like the lifestyle blogger Isabella would be a really great example of this because she crosses all of these boundaries now.
Yeah, I agree. You could argue that she started out as a vlogger or expert blogger, but is now part of the celebrity fabric. Of course, she's got her own product range now too. So they may look like more niche brand discovery factors on their own, but when you combine them, they really have a broad reach. So looking at 16s to 24s again, 3 in 10 say they discover brands to at least one of the sources listed here. And that makes influencer marketing more effective than it may first appear. Put together, they're almost as effective as TV ads for 16 to 24s, as TV ads influence a third of that youngest age group. And I think there's a stereotype of influencer marketing being a very aspirational tool for discovering brands, very visual, often on Instagram, and usually reserved for categories like travel, beauty, or fashion. But I think there's more to it than this, and I think that influencer marketing is just as important for product search as it is for discovery. It's roughly the same number of internet users who research through vlogs as discover brands through them. Like brand discovery, I think it's important to cast a wide net of data points that can refer to influencers to get an accurate picture. So beyond vlogs, where 14% of the 16 to 24s look to research, there's a fifth of 16 to 34s who say they look at blogs on products or brands. As Katie mentioned earlier, celebrities aren't the be-all and end-all. So at the top end, you've got Kylie Jenners, who charge in the region of $1 million per post. And at the other end, there's micro-influencers, bloggers who might slip under the radar of widespread awareness, but are trusted and respected voices in their categories.
But if these figures for blogs are so close for both discovery and research, aren't we just looking at the same audience here? Isn't it just an audience of frequent blog watchers?
It's a fair question. There's obviously some overlap, but it's only about half. Or to put it another way, there's a good proportion of vlog watchers who only use it in the discovery phase, or who only use it in the research phase. So some users watch vlogs with discovery intent, and others have more research intent. I want to take a look now at a classic influencer category to see how all this can work in practice. So let's take a specific example of men's hair products. In March 2017, the men's personal care brand Axe, which sold as Lynx in some markets, asked 30 influencers across music, comedy, and sport to share a quick, usually comic video of how Axe's messy look paste would fit into their daily routine. And this aligned with Axe's goal to make their target market more aware of hairstyling products and the possibilities in using them. They were trying to make them aware of what was, to them, a brand new product category. On the other hand, you've got vloggers and bloggers who will review Axe or Lynx products alongside other drugstore brands. James Welsh can offer his verdict on the product to his subscribers, which number in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, this really reminds me of the L'Oreal example you mentioned, Olivia, and how they use influencers reviewers rather than like actual advertisers.
Yeah, and I really like that example because when a brand the size of L'Oreal is going after influencers with smaller follower accounts, you can get an idea of the impact they can have. So for Axe or any other hair product manufacturer, you can see two ways here to approach influencer marketing. So there's programs like Axe's Creators, where you piggyback on social celebrities, often with large follower counts in the millions. But for those internet users who already know about hair products and want to explore the options best for them, whether for price or hair type, then there's another category of influencers they trust to lead them to the best option. And that's a really good representation of the different ways influencer marketing can work as a whole. So hopefully that covers some of the why and the how of influencer marketing. But that, of course, still leaves the where. Olivia, you've been looking at which social platforms are the most effective, right?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So to provide a different viewpoint, we can also look at the effect of influencer marketing across the leading social networks. So in our data, it's visitors of Snapchat that emerge as the most receptive to influencer marketing overall. So that is that they're the most likely to discover brands and products through the blogs, vlogs, or the celebrity endorsements that we've just been talking about.
The social platforms are really adapting to this type of content, aren't they? You just have to look at Snapchat testing its swipe up feature or Instagram launching IGTV to see this in action.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure that they'll continue to find new and innovative ways to support this marketing technique too. So among the other platforms, YouTube may have once been the home for bloggers, and Facebook might be the oldest social network. But visitors to these platforms are actually far less likely to say they're influenced by this type of content. And Facebook and YouTube are the most visited platforms overall, though, so it's clear that there is a balance to be found by brands between maximising their consumer reach, but also actually reaching those who are the most receptive to this form of marketing. And I also just want to briefly touch on the potential impact of these internet users who follow this type of content online too. Now, over half of those that discover brands via the channels we've discussed posted a review of their own last month, which actually puts these internet users around 25% of their average for this behaviour. And this shows how there can be a knock-on effect of influencer marketing, whereby a major influencer can trigger its followers to share their own opinions about brands or products online to their own social network.
Okay, cool. So thanks, Olivia. Now we're just going to move on to the final section of this webinar, where we showcase a study we conducted in August in the UK and US. So this study was carried out among a fresh sample of respondents, and we asked them a whole range of different questions, from the types of influencers they choose to follow to their thoughts on trust and authenticity. Chris, you're going to kick us off with a look at which types of influencers are most popular, and also which brand verticals who make the biggest impact with this marketing strategy.
Thanks, Katie. So with this bespoke survey, we were able to uncover deeper insights into the influencer marketing trend, like which types of influencers are most popular. But when you think of influencer marketing, the ones which probably come to mind are the lifestyle categories like food, fashion, or travel. And food does very well, coming out in top, in fact, with 45% saying they follow influencers in that category. Food's quite a gender-neutral category, popular with both men and women, but otherwise there's quite a pronounced gender split between which influencers are preferred. So sports takes the lead with men, while beauty and fashion are at the top for women. Still though, there's a couple of surprising findings here when you split the genders that I want to point out. 33% of men say they follow fashion influencers, and travel is more popular with men as well, which I personally wasn't expecting. I think this really highlights some potential for brands in those areas to reach out and get men on board.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think with influencer marketing, it's often quite difficult to quantify its impact. Like you said earlier, Chris, it's more of a subconscious marketing technique. So via influencers, brands are able to affect consumers' awareness and attitudes without them really even being aware of it. All that said, though, when we ask them whether they think their purchasing decisions are impacted by the influencers they follow, it's 35% who say they do so. I think that's probably a common misconception that most internet users who follow celebrities are female, but our research paints a different picture, as I mentioned earlier. So men were not only more likely to say that they relate to influencers, they were also more likely than women to say that influencers affect their purchase decisions. And I think this really nicely shows how brands targeting men can have a big impact in this space, especially in verticals like sports, food and gaming, which are so popular among men.
Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting finding. When I think about influencer marketing, I normally associate it with those areas like beauty and fashion, but it shows potential for a variety of brands.
Yeah, definitely. And Chris, you mentioned earlier that the most popular types of influencers are, was it food, beauty and fashion?
Yeah, overall, so if you combine the genders, food was top, followed by beauty and then fashion.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting because it's actually the more niche and research heavy topics like personal finance and travel where influencers turn out to be the most influential. So around half of those who follow influencers in these areas say that their purchase decisions were affected by seeing this kind of content. And then if we look at the other end of the spectrum for purchase influence, we can see the fitness. And I guess this is really down to influencers in these areas being more sources of inspiration, so for things like recipes or exercise routines, rather than sources of actual product discovery. With a food influencer, for example, you might consult their recipes, but you're probably not going to be looking at them to decide which brands to buy in your weekly shop. But I think done right, this shows how influencer marketing can be a really lucrative strategy for a whole wide variety of different brands. And as Olivia is going to talk about now, it's not a completely foolproof strategy.
Thank you, Katie. So as we've sort of discussed already, it's clear that influencers aren't only a useful way to sell the product, but actually most effective as a source of advice around important and complicated topics. But it's important for brands to acknowledge that a follow doesn't guarantee this influence, and there are of course other factors at play. So for example, when we asked respondents whether the influencers that they follow make unbiased and trustworthy recommendations, only 4 in 10 actually agreed, which is relatively small, all things considered, and almost a third actually disagreed with that statement.
Yeah, that's interesting, but do we see any differences across the genders? So we saw, as I mentioned before, the strategy is particularly effective among men, so is it safe to assume that they're actually more trusting as well?
Yeah, that's right. So when we looked at the data, men were on average around 30% more trusting. So this shows how brands need to be smart with influencer marketing and really work to strike the right balance. So it's important for brands to choose their creative partners carefully, as partnering with the wrong influencers, or too many of them, could seem inauthentic and turn consumers off.
I guess consumers will turn away from influencers who aren't genuine, just as consumers turn to ad blockers when sites become overloaded with ads.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, if we consider how crowded the influencer space is becoming, consumers aren't short of these accounts to choose from online either, which makes this all the more important. And being transparent with consumers is something that will help to build this trust, particularly around the nature of the partnership between the brand and the creator. Again, so when we asked respondents, a huge 3 in 4 agreed that followers should be informed about paid for promotions, and only a tiny 6% actually disagreed.
Yeah, I think this just really shows how transparency is really key for ensuring sustainability of this marketing technique.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like regulatory bodies are making movements, and that just shows how important it is. So, for example, the Advertising Standards Authority in the UK has introduced its own ad guidelines. And for the US, the Federal Trade Commission has done the same. So there are obviously many reasons why marketers are moving into using influencers, but as we discussed, there's far more to its success than just a mass following. And done right, influencers can provide great returns and a direct route to consumers, but the what, where and how are really crucial to maximising its impact.
Great, thanks Olivia. Yeah, and as you said, influencers offer brands a really great opportunity to reach consumers very authentically than they would do so via more traditional advertising forms. And as content community is something that is so important to Generation Z, this form of marketing should undoubtedly be at the forefront of many marketers' minds. So I think we've covered all the main points, so we'll probably wrap it up there. Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you found it interesting. Everyone who signed up to the webinar will receive the recording in an email in the next few days. If you have any questions about the topics we covered today or anything at all, please feel free to get in touch with any of us. You can find out more about Global Web Index from our website at globalwebindex.com. That has just more details about the other products that we have on offer, like our custom research offerings and our GWIQ analytics solution. So thanks everyone, and have a great day.